Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Scrimshaw Show. My name is Evan Scrimshaw. Nathaniel Arfin's here to record the football show, but there have been 4 public and 1 Nick Kuvelis campaign research Ontario poll, and we're definitely going to an Ontario election next week. So, Nathaniel Arfin, thoughts on the state of our impending, Ford, super majority, Ford overlords. That was the word I was looking for.
He's the mayor of Ontario, and he will continue to be so. It makes perfect sense for Doug Ford right now to call this election. Everyone's focus is on what's happening federally, and Ford has positioned himself really well to be kind of the goon squad for the feds, to not be afraid to stand up to Trump. It's been impressive, frankly, and that does not bode well for Ontario.
Yeah. Oops. I'll edit that out. I think the big thing about this is obviously there have been 4 polls out, 4 public polls out, plus Nick Kuvelis dropped some data. Main Street and Liaison both sort of coalescing around a 40-30 lead, conservatives over liberals. Leger 46-22. Innovative Research Group IRG was 52-23. And then Nick Kuvelis had 47-23. I guess we'll just start with like the pollster words because people will find that interesting. Who do you think is likelier to be correct? Leger and IRG or Main Street and Liaison?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with the Nick Kuvelis side on this. That's not to discount Keto's work in Ontario. I think he's a very good pollster, but Liaison, I'm not super bought into. And if they're showing numbers that are different, Leger, I'm going with Leger.
So the boring answer is it's probably somewhere in between, right? So Doug Ford won the popular vote by like 17 last time. Seems fairly likely that he's somewhere in that sort of like 15 to 20 band if I were to be putting a number on it. Because the thing is, the reason I didn't get too excited about Main Street was like Main Street Liaison. It's just like it's nice. I would like this to be true, but it didn't really make logical sense that Doug Ford was going to be doing this sort of Captain Canada routine, right? That he was going to be putting Canada above Ontario. And just generally, like, I hate Doug Ford. I despise Doug Ford. And even I can't get to the, like, same levels of just, like, of hatred, right? Like, I can't throw the 101 mile an hour fastball against Doug Ford right now. I just can't. He sucks. I'm not voting for him. But my hatred, which is usually an 11, is now an 8, right? And even though the level of my hatred for Doug Ford versus everybody else's Ontarians are not the same, right? It seems fairly likely to me that that my change in intensity is probably reflected by everybody. So it's like, yeah, okay. So Bonnie Crombie is gonna have a good run of polling at the same time that's happening. That didn't seem likely. My guess is that it's probably somewhere 20-ish, which is mostly just where I would have that's kind of where I would have guessed it to begin with. 44-24 something. The other reason I would say that is, of course, is that if you just take what Nick Kuvelis said and move the poll about 4 points to the left on margin, it's pretty consistently correct. The thing about Kuvelis is that I hate Nick Kuvelis. Um, this man did literally misunderstand my point on Christmas Day and threatened to, and like vaguely threatened to sue me. So that was delightful. But like two things about Cavalis. One, he's frustratingly good at his job. Like there are pollsters in Canada I'd much rather be fighting against. And certainly a hell of a lot of American pollsters I'd rather be fighting against than this. Like Cavalis, because he's an asshole, but he's an effective asshole, first off. And second of all, this is the bigger thing for me, is just like Cavalis puts his name on his shit, right?
Yeah.
Cavalis, if Cavalis is putting something out as the universe, he'll put his name on it. He'll put Campaign Research's name on it. He doesn't do the like anonymous party internal data provided to the Star or whatever. He'll put his fucking name on it. And that's honestly, that is worthy of a certain amount of respect, because a lot of people who do campaign data only put their name on it when they're right. And Cavalis put his nuts on the table, right? He fucking put them down. He might be right, he might be wrong, but like respectfully, that's a hell of a lot more courageous than a lot of people generally are at this point. And it never made logical sense that this was really a 10-point race and Crombie had some amount of momentum. It just didn't make sense, right?
Yes, it's absolutely admirable that Cavalis does stand behind his work. That's about the limit of my praise will go for him. It's very clear that there has been a tone shift lately. I think a lot of the mainstream issues that we have in Ontario that are Doug Ford's fault, frankly, they just haven't been as much of a focus in mainstream news, in discussions. There's just a lot going on in Canada right now, to the point where Ontario has taken a back burner, and I haven't seen the kind of language that I would like to see out of the Ontario Liberals right now.
I mean, let's be clear. That's just because you're a communist.
Well, one of the things that I want to point out is Bonnie Crombie has come out with statements that Doug Ford is calling an early election in order to avoid the RCMP investigation. I don't think that is winning messaging.
No, the response to this campaign should be Doug Ford wants to give us an opportunity to vote him out. Bring it on. Any sort of like, it's bad that we have an opportunity to vote out Doug Ford is like nonsensical, and I do hate it severely. I mean, Bonnie obviously dropped the big housing policy in December, which was very good. Since then, her latest dumb trial balloon is like ripping up a contract with Starlink, which Tyler Meredith seems to think is like a good and effective rejoinder, and I think is nonsense. Like, why are we making this about Doug Ford? It's very obvious that there is an anti-Ford majority, or at least an anti-Ford, coalescing vote that needs to be drawn out to the polls, because the difference, that I wrote about this in one of my Wednesday columns, is, the Ontario election might not be the most compelling electoral event of February, right? Which means that you have to make people care about this race. You can't just get the sort of federal elections have a certain baseline in turnout just because they're the most interesting, important thing happening in the news, right? And you will get the front page of the newspapers and the news websites, and you will get the first 3 blocks of the national and CTV national news every single night, right? Ontario election is not guaranteed that in the slightest, which is why you need to actively make a case to voters as opposed to just getting turnout by inertia. The thing about Bonnie is why, like, the case I made is that she needs to pitch herself and let the NDP do the, like, oh, Doug Ford is bad stuff, because that seems to be all the Merit Styles can do. I don't get what Crombie is doing. She had a plan, she had a pitch, she had a whatever, and now she doesn't have that. She's talking about Elon Musk, which, respectfully, yeah, it was a Nazi salute, and no, it wasn't. It was a fucking, Sig Heil. But, like, why are we talking about Elon Musk and not talking about your plan to build homes, or your plan to end encampments, or your plan to tackle drug problems, or whatever the fuck? Why are we talking about Elon Musk?
Exactly. These are the things that Bonnie Crombie needs to be able to stay focused on. She has a great policy development team. I think that that's clear, and that should be where she's leaning. We also, because we're in this election campaign, Crombie needs to be visiting every single riding, and I know she has been doing this with a lot of the newly announced candidates, but she needs to be visiting every riding and getting on the news about it and talking to people about the issues that she's seeing that are in communities and why that community is special or different from the one that she last visited. There's so much to talk about in terms of how to improve Ontario that I don't understand how we keep getting stuck in this cycle where all we hear is Doug Ford bad.
Because Doug Ford bad is easier. Because Doug Ford bad is easier, right? And that's the problem, is that you can just play whack-a-mole with Doug Ford bad every single day, and it's running a disciplined campaign about yourself is a lot harder, and keeping the discipline is a lot harder than, just genuinely putting yourself in a position to actually articulate why you deserve to be in office. And the real problem is that, the Liberals wasted, 4 or 5 months running a Tom Allison playbook, and then he lost the Milton by-election and he got demoted. And it's like, those 5 months, I think, are really going to be what end up. I don't think Bonnie was ever winning this, and I think Trump certainly didn't necessarily help her chances, but, like, I really think we're going to look back and go, we just wasted 5 months of an already pretty short leadership. And that's going to be why the party was just completely unprepared, is that, we're about to walk into a campaign and literally we've announced like 3 policies.
It honestly, it feels like there was a lack in their transition planning. When Bonnie won the election, she did have energy. There was support behind the party and they were in the news. There was a lot to be happy about. And then it kind of just stopped. And they didn't really pick up that momentum at any point in time. And when they did have wins, like the housing policy, like their plan for more doctors, those wins just disappeared.
Well, no, what happened was she wins. The Ford doesn't come through on housing reforms. They talk about housing for like 2 weeks in the spring and talk about 4 units as of right. And they start to get on that message. The Milton by-election gets called. They go full in on Milton and basically completely abandon province-wide campaigning or province-wide messaging, right? Bonnie basically camps out in Milton. They lose badly. They suffer a 4-point swing against them, right? Bonnie then fires Tom Allison, and basically they wasted the entire like late spring and summer, right? Now they would say, well, we were developing policy. Okay, that's fine. That's true. I'm sure the tax cut doesn't take that Like I'm sure getting the tax cut ready and getting the doctor's plan ready and getting the housing plan certainly ready takes time. But like, guys, it's been a year now. And then what happened very obviously was the tax cut, the doctor's plan, and the housing plan were all November or December announcements, I believe. I think the tax cut was November. What happened is that they ran into the wall called nobody cares about the news after a certain point in December, and to the extent that they did, Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, thank you for stepping on all of our momentum. But the reason that I only have a limited amount of sort of sympathy for that argument is maybe don't fucking save all your big announcements for December.
Yeah, especially if you know or reasonably expect an early election call. They could have done either one before December, like do the tax cut in November, and then go hard into how the Ontario Liberals are celebrating the holiday season throughout December and, do all the dinners and all of that. And then come into the new year with the splashy housing announcement and remind people about the doctor's announcement or the tax cut or whatever you've announced before. Everyone is aware that there is kind of this mushiness in the new year where you just kind of forget those 2 weeks because everything is hectic. So what happens next has to be either a reestablishment of your policy priorities or new policy priorities. And instead we got let's get rid of Starlink.
Dude, why the fuck are we talking about Starlink? It's not as bad as the Ontario NDP's like safety zones for drag bars, but like why the fuck do smart people think this is a good idea?
It's incredibly frustrating, especially right now.
Is it just consultant brain? Is it just the worst example of consultant brain we've seen in a while?
Well, I think it's Elon Musk is unpopular with Canadians right now, so let's attack him.
Right, but like that's not right. But it's this like we're unpopular. Elon Musk is unpopular. Let's attack Elon Musk to become more popular. It's like, yeah, that doesn't actually solve your problems. Because the fundamental problem is that people are not voting for Elon Musk, they're voting for Doug fucking Ford. And like this is like the worst brand of like Clinton Biden era politics of like attack somebody because they're proxied to somebody else. It's like, guys, who cares? I have one unrelated to Ontario thing. And it's entirely possible I will cut this from the podcast if you feel like that is what we need to do. Guess who's in the National Post today talking about how his fellow progressives have been lied to about Israel?
Oh no. Who's this?
Andrew Perez.
Oh.
I'm skimming it right now. This is one of the worst. This is one of the worst things ever. October 7th. So he's trying to make the point that like October 7th, shook Israelis to their core, reawakening collective trauma and reminding them of the existential threat their country has long faced. Yeah, I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
Like, that's true. I mean, we're really the 1,200 Israelis who died really getting a lot more than the 35,000 Palestinians or whatever the latest number is. Just truly delightful, guys. Just truly great that we're just publishing this shit. Yeah, no, love that. Probably about to get blocked by him for the second time. Thanks for doing this, buddy. We're going to be doing the football show in a minute. You obviously read my strategy column, my memo to them. Anything that you would add? Any idea that you would like me to propagate next time I write about Ontario, or did you like my 6 key ideas?
I really liked your 6 key ideas. There was one that stood out to me, and I'm just going to give that a shout out, and that's the approach to drug use and homelessness as and addressing the root causes of those problems instead of the symptoms as part of a broader safety and anti-crime pitch. I think that's a really great approach, and it's something I have actually noticed lately being kind of used by Nate Erskine-Smith, the housing minister, in his approach to talking about encampments and removing encampments by providing supportive housing, by providing solutions to the problem instead of just wiping the problem away and pretending it doesn't exist.
Yeah, the problem is that like I'm waiting to see what they're going to do on that, because they've made clearing encampments a high priority, and it's still deeply unclear what they mean. But well, I've already pissed enough people off by complaining about the leader's dinner speech, so we are where we are. Did you see that Bonnie is allegedly having a campaign dinner? And I can't remember if it was mid-February or mid-March.
It's mid-March. I saw this,
which will be after the campaign.
Yes, it was. I think March 19th was her scheduled dinner, and I don't know what that dinner is going to be like. Because
funereal, I think, will be how it is. That or extremely, coup plotty, because I don't think either of us think Bonnie's going to do well enough to justify a second term.
Yeah, if this election goes the way I'm expecting it to go, that dinner is going to be kind of somber.
Yeah, seems pretty likely. I mean, nobody loves a good coup like the Liberals. Arfin Nathaniel on Twitter, but you don't tweet anymore. Scrimshaw Unscripted does substack.com for me. E Scrimshaw, the shit. David Cloud's coming on the pod next week. Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for having me.